Welcome back, everybody. Today we're getting into the scope that you see in my hand right here. This is the Bushnell Elite Tactical 1 to 6.5. This one here is the second focal plane. It is also with the BTR2 reticle. Now, the reason I'm being very specific about that is this model itself was just released at SHOT Show 2017, and it has some upgrades from the previous Bushnell Elite 1 to 6s that have been out there in the past. Some of those were first focal plane, which is just fine. We'll get into that a little bit later on. And some had a different reticle. They had the BTR1, which was more of a BDC type reticle. This one is upgraded with all new turrets. These turrets are actually borrowed from the Big Brother, which is their 1 to 8, and they're more like, I guess, flagship of the low power variable scopes that they offer out there. It has the same turrets and internals as those, which are really nice upgrade in my opinion. And it has a few other things going on that the older ones didn't. So I just want to make sure to clarify that, because I know there are reviews of this scope with a similar name out there that aren't exactly the same as this one. So what we're going to do is get into all those details, let you guys know exactly what's going on with the scope. But first we have to let the dogs take a look at it and make sure they approve, and then we'll get into those details. Typically, we don't really show boxes here in our reviews, but I wanted to show you guys this one just because, like I said, there's basically 4 different variants of the scope out there. So I want to show you, this is the newest, latest one. This is what the box looks like. So here you have it, Bushnell Elite. And if you can see on the side there, if my camera will actually focus, that is what the side looks like. It is number ET1626. So that is the model we're actually looking at. I guess while we have the box here, I'll show you. It comes with a good manual. It's actually really good. It explains the reticle very well. We will probably do that a little bit better here. At least that is my goal. Warranty card. It does come with scope caps for those interested in that. Enough of the box. Ain't nobody got time for that. We'll start out here on the rear with our eyepiece and just show you it has a ton of focus adjustments to it, way more than a typical low power variable optic. So if you guys have bad vision or anything like that, it is right up your alley because you have a ton of adjustment there. Next, we're going to check out this little swing arm here. I actually reviewed their little throwdown PCL a couple years ago, and that was one of the big things I really liked about it. I do like this knob. It works well both in the down position. You can still grab it and turn relatively easily, but in the out position, it's even faster. It gives you more leverage. It's got good knurling on there, and like you can see, it folds away nice. It's got a little detent in there, so it sort of snaps into place, both in the down and up position. And it really does turn extremely smooth. This is as smooth, if not smoother, than any other scope I've ever used. So absolutely cannot knock them on that. But most folks, in my opinion, at least I do anyway, generally speaking, we're going to be shooting at the 1 position or at the 6. So it's very quick to turn back and forth, like if you're a 3-gunner. Just like its big brother, the 1 to 8, it has these T-lock turrets. Now these turrets are very good in my opinion, very solid, and I guess we'll get into why that is. So they are 0.1 mil adjustments, and the reticle is a mil reticle. We'll get into that here in just a second, so you don't have any confusion between mil MOA reticles like a lot of scopes out there have. So it's mil, so we're good there. So what I like about them is that they lock extremely securely in place. So let's say the windage here, basically to adjust it, you're just going to pull out like that, and you can feel like it's sort of like a vacuum feeling. It kind of like sucks out, and then adjusting your windage either way is very positive, very secure. It's tactile, it's audible, it's crisp adjustments. You can't really be mad about that in any way. And then they have with the T-lock system that they have, basically you can see I did it here for my elevation, but I didn't do it for the windage. You just unscrew this little piece right here, pop it off, and then put your elevation or whatever right where it needs to be. So you can set it on 0, for instance, and that way you know where your elevation always is. If you're one of the guys who wants to spin dials to get on target rather than to use the reticle, the option's up to you. It does track well. We had no issues there at all. But it does have the ability to pull off and then reset it just by unscrewing this and then screw it back on where you need to be. But I really can't see these getting bumped because, like I said, it kind of sucks in. Not sure if you can hear that, but it's very like audible and tactile. You'd have a hard time getting it off. So, and even if you did, as long as you mark your windage and elevation for your 0 for your rifle, you should know if you're on or off. On the left side of the scope, we have our battery compartment as well as our illumination adjustment, and we'll take that off there. And again, everything feels smooth and solid in there. It is illuminated by one CR2032 battery. Those are pretty much everywhere these days. I mean, even Walmart has them, at least mine does. So you screw it back on there. Oops, I can actually get it to line up. There you go. Screw it back down, and then this knob also doubles as the actual illumination adjustments. So basically we have a bunch of different settings, but one thing I like about this, and I've spoken about this in several optics reviews, it has an in-between setting. So the in-between setting is off. Each one of those little dots is off. It has 2 night vision modes, which I actually didn't test, even though I do have nods. I probably should have done that. I didn't test how those work, but it does have 2 of those. And then again, you go to off, and then you start into the illumination. So the illumination doesn't really get to be noticeable in bright conditions until you get to about 7. So around 7 in bright sunlight, you can see it. It absolutely does stand out to you. And at 9, it's very crisp, though. We don't have a lot of bleed over, as you can see here from the pictures. And it illuminates basically the horseshoe ring and then the dot in the middle. So the dot in the middle is 0.3 mil, for those wondering. So it's a pretty narrow little dot there, which allows for precise shooting, which you guys are actually going to see in a couple reviews coming up. They're already filmed, but they haven't been released yet. So where I use this scope to do some precision work. So 9 is basically what I would set it at. Me personally, if I was going to be using this out there, I'd leave it right there, and just whenever I want it on, turn it on like that, and then go back out. Because like I said, unlike a lot of scopes that when you turn them up, they start bleeding, this one has no bleeding at all in the reticle, which is beautiful. So it makes it fast to acquire, either in 1 or 6 mode. And I guess we should get into that, right? So let's get into the first focal plane versus second focal plane debate, right? Each one has their merits, particularly in a low-powered scope. If you're talking about a long-range scope, anything, let's say like 6 to 24 or something like that, I generally speaking do think first focal plane is the better option there, but both work. But in a low power variable, I tend to think second focal plane is kind of the way to go for most folks. Not always, pros and cons to each. And what they are is that, for instance, if you have a first focal plane scope, the reticle, when you dial it down to 1, is going to be really small and basically not usable. Now, the opposing side of that is that you can basically use the whole reticle as a red dot. I get that. That's true. It absolutely does work out there like that. But if you actually want to use it in any sort of way, it's nearly impossible. Whereas at the second focal plane, you still have the reticle separation and everything like that. You have your little circle and your dot. With this particular reticle, that does help you get on target quickly, being with the second focal plane scope. So second focal plane also generally has better illumination. Just the way scopes are made, first focal plane is harder to get illuminated, particularly again when you get down to 1 power and that reticle is really, really small. It's just hard to power it up and make it bright. This one, no issues at all, making it daylight bright. The other downside of second focal plane is that the actual reticle itself, in terms of the mils in this case, is only accurate when you have it cranked out to 6.5. So when you have it like that, the reticle will be accurate. Speaking of the reticle, let's get into it. The BTR2 reticle is what this particular one uses. It's a mil-based reticle. Basically, so if you're looking from where the dot is all the way down, you'll see the hash marks of 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, and so on. Those are mils, and in between there you can see we have 0.5 mil increments in terms of holdovers there. Now for what you see on the windage, it's not exactly windage. I'll roll in an image here of what it's actually broken down in terms of mils if you guys wanted to use mils for that. But what that is a ranging capability. So they have it set to range at 10 inches. Again, we're talking about being on max power on 6.5. So basically when it lines up on the all the way to the left, that is 10 inches at 100 meters, and then go inside, so it'll be 10 inches at 200 meters, and then 10 inches at 300 meters, all the way out to 400 meters. So that is a way to range estimate your target if you don't want to use the mils below. Now, if you want to use the mils below, by all means do it. It would be very classic milling to do so. So we have that nice dot in the center that, like I said earlier, the dot is illuminated, as is the horseshoe on 1x. It's very, very fast to pick up. I'm not sure what it would actually equate to, but I can tell you I have EOTechs with the 65 MOA dot. It's a little bit bigger than that. So That'll kind of give you an idea of what it looks like with the second focal plane reticle on 1x. And of course, I'll try to roll in pictures here for you as well. Speaking of 1x, is it a true 1x? As I've said here many times in the past, I've never seen a true 1x variable power scope in my life. I've never seen one where you could actually co-witness irons behind it and use it. That to me would be the definition of it, like you can with the red dot. This one's close though. It's really, really close. It's, it's 1.1, 1.2, somewhere in there. So it's extremely close. So kudos to them. I'm not knocking it. It's about as close as you can get, about as close as I've seen. On the 1x setting, you're going to have a field of view at 100 meters of 35 meters, so pretty wide field of view through the scope. And then if you go and run it over to 6x, you're going to drop that down to 6.5 meters. So it starts to tighten up a little bit. And as you'd expect with a low power variable scope, particularly one that's 1 to 6, is the eye box changes as well. I'm not sure how to exactly quantify that. But in the 1x setting, it's pretty forgiving. You can have your head in a non-optimal position, say you're shooting up or downhill or something like that, and you can't get your traditional cheek weld. It's pretty forgiving there. However, when you get over to 6x, it does get a little bit tight, and if your head's not in the right position, you'll probably start to see some black around the edges. Many of you have never seen one of these in person, so I wanted to compare it to a couple popular scopes out there. So here we have the Bushnell 1 to 6, and then we have our Reticle AccuPower here 1 to 4. So you can see how they compare in terms of size. Both do use a 30 millimeter tube, so mounting options, really there's just a ton of them out there for you. The AccuPower though is a little bit lighter weight. I think this one weighs in at 16 ounces on my scale. This one here, the Bushnell, weighs in at 22 ounces on my scale. Both of those are with the battery, so you're definitely getting a little bit heavier optic here. Of course, part of that is just the actual larger eyepiece that you can see. It also uses high density or HD glass, which provides phenomenal clarity for sure. It is made in Japan, so it does have the Japanese glass on there. You can see the made in Japan there. And then another comparison is going to be our primary arms. This is their 1 to 8 Platinum series. Let's see if we can take these actual covers off here for you. Maybe not. There we go. Got that one off, so you guys will be able to better see a size comparison. Now, for those that don't know, the primary arms is the same size as the loop-holed 1 to 8, size and weight-wise, so it'll be very similar in terms of that. You can see the 1 to 6 is a good bit smaller there. It's also lighter weight. This one here, the primary arms, weighs in at 27 ounces on my scale, so you're going to add about 5 ounces. And of course, this one's going to have a 34 millimeter tube. Again, same size as the loop-holed 1 to 8 for those that are familiar with it. So that's kind of how it stacks up size and weight-wise to a couple other offerings that we've reviewed here and are pretty popular out there in the market. We mentioned the HD glass, which is always a good thing. Now, talking about glass clarity is always difficult to do here on camera, even when I take pictures of it, because basically what I'm doing rather is taking a bunch of lenses in my camera to photograph a bunch of lenses on the scope, and there's just so much distortion in there that you can't really see when you actually look at it with the human eye. But the glass is very good. Just to kind of give it, like, I guess an analogy, right, would be like you have your basic, like, pretty good but not great glass, like on like a primary arms Gen 3 Vortex Strike Eagle, something like that. So those are like, your $3 to $400 scopes, and that glass is fine for what it is. And then you have sort of like your middle grade stuff, like for instance your Reticle AccuPowers and AccuPoints, somewhere in there, which is good glass for sure. And then you have like your really high end stuff, your Schmidt & Bender, your Night Force, and that stuff's just awesome. This is going to be somewhere in between, so it's going to be somewhere like in the, for instance, the Reticle AccuPoint line. Those are very good scopes. I've reviewed them positively here in the past. They have great glass clarity. That's kind of where I would say this is. It's not Schmidt & Bender, but it also doesn't cost, $3,000. But at some point with glass clarity, particularly these days, you reach a point of diminishing returns. So where that is for you, I don't know, but it has very good clarity. One thing you need to be aware of, though, if you're looking at this scope, is the eye relief. So if you guys watched me shooting, whether you saw me with the Wilson Combat 458 SOCOM or the Savage Recon that we had this on, those are basically the two test rifles for this scope. One thing you'll notice is my stock is sort of retracted. The eye relief on this scope is 3.75. Now, with a lot of low power variable optics out there, it's going to be more around 3, sometimes 2.75. So if you really want to square up to the target, you are going to need some sort of like a Recon type mount that's going to get you out there and be extended. So I was using the Weaver mount for this, which probably wasn't ideal, but we just wanted to use it just to kind of show and see how it would do. With that type of mount, I would definitely recommend like a Midwest Industries extended mount, an ADM extended mount, or even I think on the high end like the Geissele extended mount. We'll put links down below for those looking for it. So speaking of links down below, like I said, this one's kind of hard to find out there with this particular model, but when you do, price point, they're going to be somewhere, say like $900 to $1,100, depending on the market, depending on the sale, something like that. So you're right around $1,000 for this. And basically, I review a lot of scopes here, as you guys know. I would say that price point is about right. I think Bushnell has a problem, and it's brand identity. So Bushnell sells everything from the really budget stuff that you guys are going to see at Kmart and Walmart. Basically, that stuff is just good enough to work. It does generally work fine, but clarity, turrets and stuff, they're not going to be great. It's just the way it is. And then they make stuff all the way up to this line, which is their Bushnell Elite line, which is very good. They make, you know, higher magnification scopes in this line, and they're awesome. Like, they're legitimately good scopes. And I think Bushnell has a hard time sort of conveying that to their consumer base, that they actually do make higher end stuff and not just the budget stuff. And this is right along those lines. So hopefully Bushnell will fix that. Maybe this review will help with that a little bit and get the word out that they do make some good scopes. This would be one of them. If you guys have any questions about this scope, anything else we talk about here in the review, you can always post down below in the comments section. You can also post over at my Facebook page, which is definitely where I recommend if you really want to get your questions answered, because I don't always see the ones down below in YouTube anymore. On Facebook, I generally do. So those are the places to contact me. Of course, if you guys have one of these, please let me know your experience down below in the comments section as well. I'd love to hear it. And that should pretty much do it for this review. We'll see you guys in the next video.